Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another hour of Healthy Conclusions, where we try to give our listeners important information on nutrition, exercise, and holistic alternative and integrative medicine. Please take a minute to visit our website at www.healthyconclusions.com and like us on Facebook. My name is Bob Neugebauer, and I will be your host for this evening's show. Tonight's show is being brought to you by Altrua HealthShare, which has been serving its members and their families with their health care needs since 1997. Please take a moment to visit their website at altruahealthshare.org or call 888-244-3839 to see just what Altrua HealthShare can offer for your family's health care needs, as it could mean substantial savings. Our guest for this evening is Dr. Mark Vance. Dr. Vance is a board-certified fellow of the American Academy of Family Physicians. He has over 15 years of experience in conventional medicine, including clinic, emergency room, inpatient hospital, and administrative work. In addition, he has received extensive training in alternative medicine, as well as serving as a medical director of the, formerly as a medical director of the West Clinic in Pocatello, Idaho. This unique training has equipped him with the skills to provide effective treatments for many conditions that typically have poor outcomes with standard MD medical treatment. He specializes in hard-to-treat pain and illness. So, Doctor, I spent some time at your office this past week and saw something very interesting. Was a new piece of equipment you just got in. So I wanted to have you on our show tonight so you could talk about this new piece of medical equipment and just how this machine called the HOCAT works, and explain it to our audience. What is a HOCAT, and why did you purchase it for your particular clinic?
Okay, first off, Bob, I got to thank you for letting me come back on your show here. This is my second time on here, and I really enjoyed it the first time, so I figured I'd come through and go through a second round with you. The HOCAT or HOCAT, some people say HOCAT. It's like the tomato. I'm not sure how it's supposed to be pronounced. It stands for hyperthermic ozone and carbonic acid transdermal therapy, and I know that's a bit of a mouthful. That's why we call it a HOCAT. It's a machine where it's a sauna. You sit inside this thing. It kind of closes up around you, not tight. There's plenty of room in there, but it closes up around you. Your head sticks up the top like a turtle, and then it starts doing multiple different therapies, oftentimes all at the same time, and each one of them can have significant health benefits.
So what is it doing? What does this piece of equipment do for the patients that's going to utilize it?
Well, we're hopeful that it can do a number of things. The first thing is that it has a sauna therapy to it. So you're heating up the body, having the sauna therapy. You're doing a lot of sweat, and that can be really, really helpful. It also does several other therapies, including oxygen and ozone and a bunch of other therapies in there that also can have some additional benefits. So each one of these therapies by themselves has been shown to be a very, very useful modality in treating multiple different conditions. And we're really excited about this one because it combines so many of these therapies, and we're really hopeful that we get a significant additive or synergistic type component to this when we put them all together.
All right, so let's start off and talk about the HOCAT does heat therapy. Can you tell us the benefits of both cold stress and heat stress therapies, and which would be more preferable for a patient?
Okay, so cold has a kind of a shock type effect on the body, whereas heat has more of a stimulating kind of effect on the body. And you use both of them. A lot of them are used in various different places. In Finland and Sweden, a lot of these places, they go back and forth between the ice water and going to the steam sauna kind of thing. The ice or cold tends to cut down, cause vasoconstriction, cut down on blood flow to a particular area, and then the heat will increase the blood flow to the area and hopefully increase with healing, etc. Also, as body's temperatures raise, you do get some additional benefits in the sense that your white cells can work better, the number of white cells go up, you have better ability to fight infections as a body when the temperature is raised. So raising the temperature can be a very, very useful thing in a lot of things. Also, it raises the metabolism. So the heart beats faster, you get more oxygen to the different levels of the body. And it can be a very, very helpful therapy in a lot of different ways. If the temperature gets high enough, then it can actually have some benefits with cancer and some other things, although we don't try to get it high enough for that within the Hawkett machine.
Well, let me kind of ask you an offhanded question. You're saying that the heat therapy is good for a lot of different things. Does that mean also that people who live in warmer climates than in colder climates tend to be in better condition or healthier?
Well, that's a really good question, and that's been debated for a long time. Certainly, people in warm climates have a lot less autoimmune disorders, and there's a lot of other diseases that they have a lot less of. Certainly, being in a warmer climate, people are more likely to be in the sun historically, maybe not so much in today's society, but historically they've been in the sun more. They tend to have better levels of vitamin D and some other things, which can be very, very helpful. But I do think heat, in general, having your body temperature nice and warm can be a good thing. One of the things that happens when people's thyroid goes low is their temperature goes down, and I think the temperature can be really, really important. The optimal temperature for the body normally is your 98.6, and that's where most of your body functions work the best. But as far as the fighting infection portions of it, they actually work better at a higher temperature.
So if 115 degrees down in Phoenix and I head down there, is that a good place to get better?
Well, I'm not sure you want your body to be up that hot. But I tell you, you look back, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, they would tell people, you need to go out to a nice warm climate, go sit on the beach someplace at a nice warm place down in Spain or something, and that's where people would get better.
Well, I sure used to be out there in the sun a lot. Not quite as much nowadays. So the Hawkett does heat therapy, but it's not as simple as a sauna. There are 10 therapies, as I understand it, that you can perform with this system. I would like to go through them one by one so for our audience so you could help us understand them and why they are beneficial to the patient, starting with the carbonic acid therapy.
Okay. Okay, so carbonic acid, everybody says, what the heck is that? Carbonic acid is formed in the body when your body uses, it burns fuel, burns sugar or whatever, and mixes it with oxygen, and then the byproducts are water and carbon dioxide. Now, in the local tissues, the carbon dioxide interacts with an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, and it makes a little bit of some carbonic acid, which is just a very, very mild acid. Now, what the carbonic acid does in the local tissues where that's made is make the area the pH just a little bit lower. It's a little bit more acidic in that area. And that allows increased oxygen to come out of the red blood cells and into the local tissue. So it increases oxygenation. It also can help dilate the blood vessels in the area so that you get increased blood flow to the area. And the bottom line is it allows more blood and oxygen to come in and more waste products to get out. So it can be a very, very useful therapy. With the Hawkett, depending on how you pronounce it, what it does is it creates carbonic acid. It puts carbon dioxide into the steam in there, and it creates carbonic acid. And that carbonic acid can go into the skin and into the local areas underneath the skin. It can provide some of those additional benefits. It gets a little bit more acidic. You get more blood flow to the area. You get more of the oxygen coming out of the bloodstream into the individual tissues.
So basically, this is absorbed through your skin. I don't think most people realize that the largest organ on your body is your skin, and that it can absorb a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we may get more into this later, but I tell you, the skin pores are amazing what they can do. There's thousands of them or millions of them all over your body. And what we have here is the ability and your body interacts with the environment through these pores all day, every day. And it has a significant ability to detoxify and to absorb things from the environment. There's a lot of creams and lotions we put on topically because things do get absorbed through the skin.
And, we also get a lot of environmental toxins being absorbed through the skin. So I would imagine that if you can suck in the poison, you can also suck in the good stuff.
Well, unfortunately, it's a two-way street. You're right. You can get a lot of good stuff through there, but you can also get a lot of garbage. Unfortunately, today we're getting more and more of the garbage and less of the good stuff.
And this is supposed to be a cleansing therapy because, as I understand it, it will increase the blood circulation throughout your body by up to 25% and also increases the flow in your lymph system and dilates your capillaries. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And so the carbonic acid can be tremendously helpful. It's interesting, people talk about, wow, we need to get more oxygen, we need to get more oxygen. And we'll talk more about oxygen later. It's extremely important. But the thing that they forget about is the CO2 side of it. If you breathe in rapidly, very, very quickly, you can become and start hyperventilating. Your body, the muscles start cramping, you get numbness and tingling around your lips and in your fingers. And the problem isn't that there's too much oxygen or that there's not enough oxygen. The problem is that there is not enough of the carbon dioxide. And so with this therapy, we do some oxygen. We'll talk about that later, but we also do some carbonic acid. We get some carbon dioxide in the skin, and that helps significantly with the increasing of oxygenation into the local tissues.
So basically, the carbonic acid is helpful in cleansing your system, increasing your blood flow, and helping toxins move out of your body. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to go to the second part of this, which is when you combine the carbonic acid with ozone therapy, which I understand this machine does. How does this work, and what does it do to your body?
Okay, so typically what happens with this is for the first 3 to 5 minutes, whatever it is of the session, they heat it up, they get the steam in there, you start sweating, and then they put some carbon dioxide in, and this carbon dioxide reacts with the steam and makes the carbonic acid, and then that can interact on the skin and get absorbed through the skin. After the first few minutes, once that's done, you've got increased blood flow to the skin, you've got increased circulation, you've got increased oxygen output from the blood cells into the tissues. Once that's done, then it puts ozone, which is a form of activated oxygen, along with O2. So ozone is O3, and then they put the O3 and the O2, and that goes into the chamber, and then that gets absorbed through these already dilated pores. The carbonic acid and the heat and everything opens up the pores so that more of the stuff can come in, and then you get increased absorption of the ozone and the oxygen through the skin.
Okay, Doc, can we take a quick break here so I can absorb a little commercial break?
Sure.
We have to take a quick break. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Health Conclusions, brought to you by Altrua Health Share with your host, Bob Neugebauer, on 580 KIDO AM and 107.5 FM. Welcome back to Health Conclusions on 580 KIDO. We're speaking with Dr. Mark Vance, sponsored by AltruaHealthShare.org. All right, so you were explaining to us just how carbonic acid and ozone work together in helping detoxify your body and have your body absorb more oxygen. Is that right?
Yes.
Can we continue on with that? I don't think a lot of people understand. Ozone too, is actually O3. Is that correct?
Right, so oxygen that we breathe in that's in the air is O2, and it's two oxygen atoms in the molecule. Ozone is O3, so it's got an extra oxygen atom in the molecule. And ozone, I think of it as an activated form of oxygen, and it can do a number of things. It can stimulate the production of white blood cells, it can raise levels of the interferon to fight various infections, increase the production of tumor necrosis factor, which again can fight various tumors and things. Interleukin-2 kills bacteria, viruses, fungi. Helps with heavy metal detoxification, oxidizes plaques, reduces viscosity in the blood. I mean, it does a whole slew of different things that are all good in the blood.
So it's not just it's not just a something to clear the toxins from your body. It actually enhances your immune system. And does help and fight several different diseases. As I understand it, there are some doctors using this directly on cancer tumors and having good results with it.
Yeah, I haven't heard of them specifically putting ozone on the tumor itself. I guess you could put it on, if you got a skin tumor, you could put ozone directly on there, and that would work pretty well. Ozone, you don't use pure ozone. That would be pretty dangerous, but it's usually about 98% O2 and then just a 2-3% O3. But the ozone really is activating and helps significantly in boosting the immune system. Oxygen itself works great for cancer therapy. And again, we don't claim to treat cancer or anything like that. But we prefer to have the oncologist do this, but I do think a lot of the stuff that we can do can be adjunctive and help significantly in addition with the things that the oncologists are doing.
So how does the carbonic acid therapy enhance the ozone therapy? How do they mix here?
Okay, so in your body, you have, as we were saying earlier, you have the tissues are putting off carbon dioxide and then they're pulling in the oxygen. And so there's in the tissues, there's normally a milieu where you have the oxygen and carbon dioxide in this balance together. So if we increase one or increase the other one too much, things can get a little bit out of balance. With the carbonic acid, what we're trying to do is we're increasing the carbonic acid side of things, or the carbon dioxide part of it, and then what we do next is we come in with the oxygen and have that come in. In our tissues, when you exercise, for instance, your muscles are making a lot more of the carbonic acid, and so as a response to that, later on, then you get increased blood flow and then increased oxygenation coming in. And we're doing the same thing here. We're putting the carbonic acid in first, so we can build up the levels of that, and that tells your body, hey, we need to get more blood flow, more everything in here. And then we come in with the ozone and the oxygen coming through the skin, so that can come in and help significantly with increasing the oxygen in the local tissues and with the increased blood flow, you get more of the toxins, et cetera, carried away. And of course, the ozone itself can work to break down various toxins as well.
We talked about body hypothermia, and the HOCAT does whole body hypothermia. Can you explain what the purpose is of far infrared therapy and steam sauna, which are in the HOCAT?
Sure. Well, far infrared light, your light spectrum is, on the one side you got the ultraviolet, and then the bluish kind of on the one side, and then coming to the other side with the lower frequencies. And the longer wavelengths, you have the red light, and then just below that is the infrared. And in the infrared light, that's basically heat. And so far infrared is just one part of the spectrum where it's basically heat coming in. And there's different ways to create heat. You could do with a fire or whatever, but you can also do part of the far infrared is just creating a kind of heat that can go through and get absorbed into your body. It can go in quite a bit further than if you just put something warm on your skin. The idea is to help raise the body temperature, and we're doing this intentionally. It's interesting, when you get sick, you get yourself a fever, and your body's making the fever so that you can get increased ability to fight infections and do a lot of other things, and it's a benefit that you get that. It's not, it's not fun to have a fever, but it's good for your body to be able to get those additional benefits, and that's what we're trying to get here.
So maybe I can get some free advice here. I understand that Candida is a fungus that gets into your intestines because maybe of some unhealthy habits or some things that have gotten in there, and that this can be killed. They can be killed with heat therapy. Is that right?
Well, heat, among other things. I think the ozone works really well with the Candida as well, quite frankly.
I see.
But for Candida, everybody wants to get rid of Candida. You're never going to get completely rid of it because it's everywhere. I mean, it's in the air, it's in the environment, right. It's everywhere. So you can't get rid of all of it. You can try to bring the levels down somewhat and prevent it from making it such a big problem with your body. And what we're trying to do here, the ozone and everything combined together, certainly can have an anti-candidal benefit. So
trying to get rid of that is like trying to get rid of the tax man. I understand.
Yeah. You're never going to be entirely successful, but if you can make it so that your immune system and everything's working fine. Candida lives places that are warm, it loves places that are moist, and it loves lots of sugar. And so if you can kind of, during the sauna, of course, we're increasing the heat, but generally speaking, for the rest of the time, if you can kind of keep your temperature so it's pretty normal, you get your metabolism working normally, you can do really well.
Well, your machine has a significant upgrade. I spent some time talking with the inventor while I was over at your shop, as opposed to other machines in that it offers a pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. Can you explain what PEMF is and what effect it has on your body and what it's used for?
Yeah, this is why we are really excited about this machine, because this is the first, we got really lucky, I must admit. We're the first clinic in the world with the new version of this machine. They've had the older version, which has been fantastic. It's helped a ton of people. Only great things to say about it. It's been really, really good for a lot of people. The new one includes a new therapy, which is the pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, or PEMF, as you were saying. Now, PEMF, what they do is it puts magnetic pulsed waves going through the body. Historically, it was interesting when they first sent people up into space. Some of the astronauts got sick in space, and nobody could figure out why. It took them forever to figure out that part of the reason was when they were in space, they weren't being exposed to the Earth's magnetic fields and the flows of the magnetic fields going through there. And once they started adding some magnetic fields into the spacecraft, then people did much better. So for the PEMF therapy has been around for quite a while, where they use these very low things trying to simulate the Earth's magnetic fields. One of the problems we have in our society today is with all the power lines and the cell phones and Wi-Fi's and all these various electromagnetic frequencies going everywhere, it can kind of mask up or cover up some of the normal balancing things for the Earth. With the PEMF therapy we have here, we're using a much higher strength of magnets coming in, and so it puts these pulses of magnets coming in, and you can absolutely feel these things as you go up to the. We did this on you, Bob, and you can absolutely feel those magnets when it's kicking in.
No question, it was a shocker, and I have to shock you one more time. We're going to have to take a quick break here. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Healthy Conclusions, brought to you by Altrua Health Share, with your host Bob Neugebauer on 580 KIDO AM and 107.5 FM. Welcome back to Health Conclusions on 580 KIDU. We're speaking with Dr. Mark Vance, sponsored by AltruaHealthShare.org. So, Doctor, we're talking about PEMF, Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy. Now, I've done a little bit of research on this, and I understand that our cells have a certain amount of electromagnetic activity in them, and a certain energy that is radiated off of them, so that each cell has its own energy, and that there are certain levels that it should be kept at, and when those levels go lower, it can cause problems for us. Is this kind of what happened with the adventures in space, and is this something that the machine cures by putting more energy into these cells?
I really think so, that's got a lot to do with it. You know, it depends how deep you want to go. Some of the new research and theories out there, talk about individual cells and maybe even your DNA being kind of like little radio transmitters. And in order to do so, they need electrons to be able to function. They talk about the difference in the pH or difference in the number of electrons or the current or whatever between the inside of the cells and the outside of the cells, and how it needs to be a certain number of millivolts, etc. So some of these electrical things can be really helpful with a lot of healing. With the PEMF therapy, what we're doing is we're putting in magnetic fields going through there. And it's interesting because anytime there's a magnetic field going through, magnetism and electricity are pretty much the same thing. They're just kind of going in opposite directions. So we get a magnetic field going through there, and we get electrons coming through because of that. One of the advantages of using the magnetic field as opposed to just putting electricity through your skin is that the skin is conductive electrically, and so putting electricity through the skin, it tends to go across the skin, and you get some. If you get enough of current, you get burning in your skin. But the magnetic can go right through and get into the deeper tissues, which the electrical therapies really don't do so well.
Well, how would the electromagnetic waves from, say, a microwave oven or a cell phone or even a smart meter be different, and why would they affect us adversely as opposed to the PEMF affecting us in a positive way?
Well, that's a really good question. Part of it has to do with the balance, but I think one of the things is, microwaves were intended to cook things. Now, the specific frequencies are made to actually make things hotter and cause other additional problems. Cell phones are made specifically to transmit signals, and they're basically little radios that we're walking around with. I got my ham radio license here a few years ago, and they talk about if you're in the realm of a lot of these electromagnetic frequencies that are going through that can cause significant problems, and we walk around with them on our cell phones in our pockets or right next to us all day long. What we're sending here is we're sending the magnetic side of it through, not so much the electricity side, but the magnetic side through. Even just a static magnet, just being next to a magnet, can increase health in a lot of different areas. But what we're doing is we're sending particular waves through that just kind of go through and help, can get much deeper into the tissues.
So is that why we see a lot of people wearing these magnetic or these magnet necklaces and arm bracelets and waistband magnets? Is that why they wear them?
Yeah, magnets have been shown for a long time to have some benefit. It's usually not, magic or tremendously huge amounts, but they do have some additional benefit. It can help with blood flow and some other things, help with the viscosity in the blood. When we talk about doing the pulse electromagnetic fields, what we're trying to do is we're sending a signal in, and it's been theorized that one of the things that can happen is that it can allow the cells to have nutrients travel across the cell membranes much more effectively than it could before. With the diets that we have, we're eating the wrong kind of fats and things, and some of these can get stuck inside the cell membranes and can wreak some havoc with the ability of the cells to transport nutrients back and forth. And the PEMF, we're hopeful, can increase this transport of nutrients across the cell membranes.
So basically, this energizes the cells and helps them function better. Because I guess when you think about it, we are just built as if we're one large microcircuit with a lot of different parts to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Over the years, there's been different theories to try and explain things. We in the past we would consider one big mess of chemicals, or now with this one, an energy thing we're talking about, we're being one big mess of like microcircuits, if you will. You could say we're a big mess of cells, or nowadays with the when we talk about all the bacteria, and there's more bacteria than there are cells, we're a big mess of various organisms together. We're more of a biome than an individual, perhaps. There's all sorts of different ways of looking at things. But certainly looking at things through an electrical viewpoint and just thinking to ourselves, wow, we've got a mass of cells, and each one of them have electrical signals that can travel back and forth, and we have the nervous system to do it, and there's other things that can send those across. That can be a very useful paradigm and way of looking at things.
You also offer something called electrotherapy. What would this be used for?
Okay, so let me finish up with the PEMF real quick.
Okay.
One of the things I like with the PEMF, and I'll get back to the electrotherapy. For the PEMF, that's actually been FDA approved. The PEMF therapy has been FDA approved for treating things like non-healing fractures, muscle weakness, bladder incontinence, and even major depression. So PEMF is a therapy that's really partially in the mainstream world. It's pretty impressive. Getting back to electrotherapy, the theory is in regular medicine they use something called a TENS unit, and what they do is they send electrical stimulations. They put an electrode in two different parts of the body and sends electrical stimulations back and forth, and that can help stimulate muscles and help with healing with that. And with our electrotherapy, it got a lot of similarities to that. In the Hawkett, you sit down there and you put your feet on a couple of electrodes that send some electric signals through your body. That can help stimulate various things.
The pulse electromagnetic can actually help heal bones and help knit them together. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, it's been, like I said, it's been FDA approved. Not this particular unit, but pulse electromagnetic therapy has absolutely been FDA approved for healing, for helping with healing non-healing fractures. If you got a break that's just nothing else is healing, you do this, and a lot of times it helps it heal.
And the electrotherapy isn't part of that. That's something different.
No, that's a separate deal.
Okay. I keep thinking electrotherapy and two wires sticking out of each side of my head and getting some electroshocks. So I don't want any of that.
No, well, I tell you, that's something that actually has been used in the regular medical world. Usually not too often because we prefer to have a little less aggressive kind of things. But that works really well for depression too. The PEMF, I don't think, is working in the same mechanism as that.
When I was over there, you mentioned to me you can exercise with oxygen therapy in this machine. What's the benefit of doing this?
Okay, exercise with oxygen therapy. This is called EWOT or EWOT, and this has been around for a while. and it can have some significant benefits. So this is actually going back to what we talked about earlier with the carbonic acid. When you exercise, your muscles are burning up a lot of calories, and they're burning up a lot of stuff, and they're putting out a lot of this carbon dioxide, which increases the carbon dioxide and carbonic acid in the local tissues. That causes increased blood flow to come to the tissues and increased oxygenation. So it ends up being it ends up helping a lot. Exercise with oxygen therapy, you do the same thing, but what you're doing is you're breathing in oxygen. You're breathing in oxygen, and you're trying to get increased oxygen to your bloodstream with that. So with exercise with oxygen therapy, you can get significant increased oxygen to the body. In addition to what you could get just even with breathing, even hyperbaric oxygen or some other things. So the exercise with oxygen therapy can help a lot with bringing oxygen, sometimes to tissues that have not had enough oxygen to it for years.
So oxygen is really a healing agent, and the more oxygen, like a hyperbaric chamber, and I've heard that they have been very positive, not just in healing outward signs of problems, but they've been using it on people who have PTSD also.
Hyperbaric is a wonderful form of doing oxygen, and I'm hopeful that with exercise with oxygen we can get as good or even better with this.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to see how this whole thing turns out. There's another part of the HOCAT that's called photon light and color therapy. What is the purpose of this, and how does it work?
Well, it's interesting. Color has various. We talked about the infrared being useful, and infrared, of course, is heat. And as you go up through the spectrum, different lights can do different things. Red tends to be energizing, green tends to be relaxing, and some of the different colors can do.
So the different colors actually do different things?
Yeah, and I don't claim to be the biggest expert in the world on the color therapy. I've got to admit, but the different colors can be helpful with different things. And again, I don't have all the details on the different colors and which ones are good for what. There are some therapies where they use specific lasers which are one specific light, and it can help with either various types of infections, or help energize certain tissues, or help with healing certain tissues. And the different colored lasers can do different treatments on different areas. And with this, what we're doing is we're going through the entire spectrum of the light colors, and you get them all.
Okay, we're going to have to take a quick break here, Doc. You're listening to Healthy Conclusions, brought to you by Altrua Health Share, with your host Bob Neugebauer on 580 KIDO AM and 107.5 FM. Welcome back to Healthy Conclusions on 580 KIDO. We're speaking with Dr. Mark Vance, and our show is sponsored by AltruaHealthShare.org. So, Doc, can you tell us what ultrasonic cavitation is and how that helps?
Sure. Ultrasonic cavitation has been used, depending on the frequency that you're using. Ultrasound therapy can be very helpful for a lot of things. The one that we have here is more helpful for working with muscles that are sore or achy or whatever, helping them heal. The different ultrasound probes have different frequencies. The one we have is a 1 megahertz, which helps more with that. There's another one that I don't believe we have that has a higher frequency, and that can help with actually breaking down fat cells. So people use it for body sculpting and some of that stuff. That's not something we're really focusing on at all, but it can actually help with breaking down some of the fat cells. It's not the kind of thing, if somebody's massively overweight, it's not going to make him lose a whole ton of weight. It's just for a spot kind of thing. And again, that's not something we haven't even done anything with that at this point, and I don't think the head that we have, I don't think does much with that. I talked with the inventor of this thing, and it's not really been something that pushed as part of the HOCAT thing. But it's one piece that can potentially have benefit for some patients.
Well, I think for most people, if you want to start losing weight, you have to start keeping your mouth shut. That has a lot more to do with it than anything electronic.
Well, and again, I'm not pushing this as saying that the ultrasound is going to make people lose a lot of weight. Honestly, I think the oxygen those are going to help a lot more with the weight, and the heat help a lot more with the weight than the ultrasound does. But anything that can increase your metabolism can help you burn off calories and help with the weight loss.
I'd like to get into a little bit something different here. The whole cat reduces supposedly the environmental risk of cancer, and I would presume this is because of the oxygenation, and it also detoxes at the same time. Do you think that this therapy, as it improves someone's immune system, has a positive effect when somebody is having cancer treatments?
Okay, so first off, and I think I said this before, I would not use this as any kind of sole treatment for cancer, and I wouldn't claim it's necessarily.
No, we're not talking about. Cancer. We're talking about this as an ancillary protocol.
So if we're talking an adjunctive therapy or an additional therapy to help out, I think it could be very helpful. So when you talk about cancers do not survive in a high oxygen environment. That's been shown by Otto Warburg. He got Nobel Prize for it a long time ago. And that's been shown time and time again to be very, very helpful. Ozone itself can be very helpful with fighting against cancer, as can hydrogen peroxide. What's interesting, it puts the ozone in the chamber that reacts with the water or the sweat on your skin. It can turn some of that into hydrogen peroxide, which also can get absorbed in there. They've done studies where they put hydrogen peroxide inside the arteries going into cancer cells. And sure enough, the cancer cells, it really helped break down the cancer cells. Surprisingly, it also actually broke down a lot of the cardiovascular plaque, or the plaque inside the arteries, and so the arteries going into these cancer cells were nice and clean after they put the hydrogen peroxide in there. I suspect ozone would do the same thing, but you don't want to put in gases inside people's arteries. That could cause all kinds of problems. So, but one of the nice things is with this particular therapy, it's all going in through the skin, so we don't have to worry about a lot of other issues that we would with IV therapies, et cetera.
So there are some integrative clinics that are using this protocol with the ozone and oxygen therapies to help people respond better to chemo and radiotherapy and experience fewer side effects. Have you had any experience with that, or talk with doctors about doing that?
Well, I've seen various testimonials and anecdotal evidence that suggests this could be extremely helpful for this. We haven't had our machine long enough to have any experience with it ourselves yet, but we're really, really hopeful that this could be one additional therapy that could help significantly. One of the problems with chemotherapy is it helps break down the cancer cells, but the problem is it also interacts a lot with the regular cells, and if we can get increased oxygenation, and help the regular cells survive better, then hopefully you can survive more of the chemo or the radiation or whatever else, so that you can get more effect of it on the cancer cells.
Well, as I understand it, the cancer cells feed on a fermentation process and not an oxygenation process. So the more oxygen you pump in there, the less it likes it.
Yeah, that's correct. So, cancer cells love sugar. Okay, they eat sugar, and they don't use oxygen. That's why increased oxygen to a cancer cell, to cancer areas, the cancer cells just don't survive. The regular cells love the oxygen, but the cancers, they, like you say, they work on fermentation. The problem with fermentation is you don't get nearly as much energy out of the food coming in, out of a glucose molecule or something coming in. You only get a couple of ATPs out of it, as opposed to with oxygen, you can get maybe 34, 36 or whatever out of there. So you can get a significant increased metabolism using oxygen. And the cancer cells don't have that ability. They've kind of lost that ability. So anything we can do to increase oxygen into the areas could be beneficial.
Well, let's just do a little quick backup here, because the PEMF raises the energy level of the cells. So wouldn't it also be a part and parcel of getting a better response for chemo and radiotherapy with fewer side effects if you're raising that ATP in the good cells and keeping them strong while killing the cancer cells?
I will tell you, I believe that's the case, although I don't know that any studies have been done on that. So I can't say 100%, but my suspicion is that, it should be very, very helpful.
So actually, we have to do a little more study in this field, and it doesn't seem like there were a lot of people doing this prior to the last couple of years, because I see more and more of it going on now, using magnetic fields and using nanoparticles that they inject into the blood, and MRI switching back and forth. So there are a lot of new studies coming up, and maybe at some point in time we actually might be able to make a real dent in the cancer that we keep having people die from every day, some 1,600 a day.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
Oh, well, I know. I've been through it myself, so I do understand that. How can the HOCAT therapies be helpful in preventing cancer? Is that because of the detoxification that happens when you use the HOCAT?
So when you talk about detoxification, the HOCAT, I think, can be tremendously helpful with that. So when you talk about detoxification, there's different ways to get the toxins out of your body. One way is to go through the kidneys. Another way was to go through the stool. Another way is to breathe some of them out. But one way that people forget about is to come out through the skin. You can actually get rid of as many toxins through the skin as you can through your kidneys. And so if we can increase the oxygen, the blood flow to the tissues so that you can get more of it coming out, and we're increasing the sweating so that more stuff's coming out through the pores, you can get rid of various metal toxins or other toxins coming out through your pores, you can help significantly. And with the HOCAT, what we're doing is we're doing the heat therapy, and we're inducing significant amount of sweat. We put steam in there so you can sweat even more, and we're getting a significant amount of sweat coming out. Plus, we're putting all the ozone. Ozone can help a lot with detoxification, as can hydrogen peroxide, and of course can the oxygen. So we're getting numerous therapies that are coming in together, and they can have a synergistic benefit, we believe, to help significantly with the detoxification. And adding the PEMF, I think, is just one more piece that I think is going to be significant benefit in addition to what was already an amazing therapy.
Well, I just wanted to touch base here. Chelation has been something that a lot of people have been using to get rid of heavy metals in their bodies.
Yes.
We absorb them all the time just from the atmosphere and foods we eat, pesticides, what have you.
Yeah.
Does this therapy actually help get rid of that?
Yeah, no, it's not necessarily, they aren't necessarily chelating agents, but ozone itself has been worked, it can act as a chelating agent and can help with getting rid of heavy metals. I believe hydrogen peroxide can do similar types of things. Certainly getting increased oxygen to tissues, then if the individual tissues themselves have more oxygen, can have more energy, they can actually work better at being able to get rid of those toxins instead of having to store them as a way of protecting the body.
So let me ask you a question. How long does a normal HOCAT session run, and what would be the cost for a patient to use this machine?
Okay, so the session itself is about 30 minutes. You're in the machine for about 30 minutes. We usually schedule an hour because we need to heat up the machine first, do some questionnaires, and do a few other things that need to kind of dry off and towel off afterwards. But the session itself is about a half an hour. As far as the cost, our regular price is $150 for the first month or so. We're doing an introductory price of $100, and it can be a very significant benefit. A lot of people, you probably want to get maybe a package of 10 of them or something like that, and to be able to try and get significant benefit. And I sit back and think this is a therapy that can be helpful not just for people who are sick, but even for people who are well. Athletes have been able to use these, and it's helped significantly with increasing their performance. And I talked with the inventor of the machine, said he did one of these treatments and was suddenly able to ride his bike better and further than he'd ever been able to do before, and he felt like he was in the zone much faster than he would otherwise be. It was pretty impressive. Now, we don't have a lot of scientific data on some of this stuff yet because this is just, like I said, it's a brand new machine, but we're very optimistic this can be extremely helpful, and the older machine has been used by various athletes in the past.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us this evening, Dr. Vance, and offering your insights into this new machine you have. This is Bob Neugebauer signing off for Healthy Conclusions. We hope you will join us again the same time next Sunday for another hour of informative talk on nutrition, exercise, alternative medicine options. Sponsored by AltruaHealthShare.org on 580 KIDO AM and 107.5 FM.